Hopefully there'll be a message. There we are. Great stuff. So, as I said, thank you everyone for joining the session today. So this is a Connecting Scotland briefing session, and as I said, I'm delighted to be joined by Silke, who will talk us through. Well, hopefully we'll cover, Silke will provide us with an overview of the Connecting Scotland phase, or phases that's been announced, the key considerations. There will be a Q&A session opportunity at the end. Please use the chat function throughout and hold your questions to the end if that's okay, and I'll try and monitor the chat throughout. So it's without further ado, I'll hand over to Silke if that's okay.
Oh, thank you, James. Thank you for setting up the session, and thank everybody for joining. I'm going to share my screen. I'm not sure I'll be able to see hands going up or messages in the chat, so I'll just say shout. Feel free to interrupt me, but there will be space to do a bit of Q&A and so on. So let's just see if I can find my presentation. Okay, is it just me or is it just in a small box?
Nope, I can see that okay.
Okay, perfect. That's what I can see. Sorry, I'm used to doing a lot more on Zoom, so there we go. Digital person, not being good at digital. But okay, great. I'm glad you can all see this. Yeah, so welcome. My name is Silke. I'm the service delivery manager at SCVO, where I've been looking after the Connecting Scotland program for the past 2-ish years. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it. I assume that quite a few of you probably were involved, or your organizations were involved previously in distributed Connecting Scotland devices and connectivity, but I'll briefly go over it, about the program, what it is, where it's going, and then we can dive into the 2 new opportunities we've got live right now. So just to kind of recap, so Connecting Scotland was an emergency response to the COVID-19 pandemic. It was launched in April 2020 and continued to deliver support until spring, summer 2022. And through the program, we distributed over 61,000 devices and mobile Wi-Fi units to digitally excluded people across Scotland. And we achieved this through the help of over 1,000 organisations like yourselves in Scotland. So it was a huge success. But the model it was based on was a gifting model. So we distributed devices and connectivity into people's households, and they were owned by them to be used to help them stay connected during lockdown. And there was a big investment by Scottish Government to make this happen. I think it was nearly £50 million, which is great, but it's not very sustainable. I don't think any of us have ever seen this huge amount of investment in digital inclusion as much as we would like this to continue. Unfortunately, the funding environment has changed quite a lot since then. There were big announcements made by Scottish Government to continue this and to get 300,000 households connected by the end of the Parliament. That aim still stands, but the investment behind it isn't there, unfortunately. But we're really pleased that we've been able to work with Scottish Government to continue the programme, albeit in a different format. So, James, you just alluded to a new phase. I wouldn't call it a new phase as such, because it is quite different from what we've had before. It is really a different kind of iteration of the programme that is looking at more sustainable ways of delivering digital inclusion across Scotland. And as part of this, we've been looking at moving from the kind of one-to-one model where a device and connection go to one person or one household, to one-to-many models where devices can support more than one person throughout their lifetime. So we've got 2 new funds open at the moment, and they are funded through an underspend, so a capital underspend from the previous Connecting Scotland programme, which is why they are capital funds only, so we can only spend it on devices and connectivity that we've had allocated funding for. So the two new funds that we have are exploring or starting to explore those new one-to-many models. The first one is support for device lending schemes or device lending libraries. And the second one is a slightly different one that is looking to support digital inclusion within housing providers, whether that's social housing, housing associations, or organizations that are providing kind of more temporary accommodation support for people. So I'll just dive right in. So for each of the two schemes, I'll give you a bit of an overview and kind of a background to the opportunity, and then look at the eligibility criteria, the target groups that were identified, what exactly you'll be able to apply for as part of each fund, what are the reporting evaluation expectations, and kind of some rough dates and timescales for them. So for the device lending libraries, the idea behind it is quite simple. We know there's already quite a few lending schemes operating across Scotland, and they've been very successful in delivering kind of support to people who need digital inclusion support. We're looking to fund organizations that are already operating lending schemes at the moment. So we're looking at organizations with experience and a resource behind it. And the reason for that is because we can only provide capital funding, so we can only give devices and connectivity, unfortunately, so we're unable to support people with additional core costs or resourcing around that for setting those up. But I would always say if you have a scheme and it's not been operating for just as long, or if you've got a very small scheme, and I've seen an application come in where the organization is currently lending one device, we'd be happy to consider that. So I would say if you're not sure, please just get in touch before you submit an application, or if you decide that you might not be eligible. So please do always reach out and discuss to see if it's worth applying. But in terms of organizations, we're open to applications from all sorts of voluntary or public sector organizations, whether you are a council body, a public library, a charity, a social enterprise, a housing provider, this will be for you. So the only exception would be if you're a private sector company, a care home, because we've had previous support through Connecting Scotland for care homes, or if you are a library that is attached to a school, for example, or a college. In terms of target groups, so these were identified by Scottish Government linked to their current priority policy areas, but we've managed to kind of make them as open as possible. So hopefully pretty much everyone you're supporting should fit at least one of those, and it really has to be just one of those. So again, please, see where you can fit people in. Don't feel too restricted by this, but yeah, we're looking to support people over 65, people who are in a low household income, those with long-term illnesses or disabilities, people who are victims of crime or abuse, or who are unemployed. Okay, so what can you apply for? So like I just mentioned, this is only a capital fund, so you can apply for devices and you can apply for connectivity. You can apply for devices that we have available through the Scottish Government framework. We've got a device catalogue that you can click through and you can check what devices we've got available. So we've got 2 laptop options and 2 tablet options at different price points, and you can check out the specs and everything on that. But again, if you've got questions about any of the devices that are available through the catalogue, please do get in touch. And the MiFis are there as well. So they're the same. If you're familiar with Connecting Scotland, there are Vodafone MiFi dongles for with 24 months of unlimited connectivity. But we're quite keen to support to be a bit more flexible than we were in the past and to support organizations with what they really need. So if you are already operating a lending scheme and the devices that we've got available aren't quite right, and you kind of want to just buy what we already have and what people are used to using, then you can also just apply for the cash value of the same grant. So it is a small opportunity, this one. It's only £100,000 is the total fund. So we've got a cap of £5,000 per application. So you could either apply just for the devices or MiFi dongles. You can mix and match that up to the value of 5K, or you can just apply for a capital grant. And then we would just ask you to tell us, what devices are you looking to buy and what do they cost? And then the application form will just tot it up for you. In terms of reporting evaluation, we've got a very keen research team in Scottish Government that wants to learn everything they possibly can, even though we've taught them a lot already, about lending schemes. They're very keen to kind of have that as one of the models they'll be supporting going forward. They had a very long list of what they'd like in terms of reporting evaluation. We managed to kind of simplify a little bit. So it will be just reporting around the number of users you've got, the number of loans, kind of the length of loans, how are people using their devices, how are they benefiting from them. And they'd also be really keen to get your help to just be put in touch with people so they can speak to a sample of service users in more depth, whether that's interviews or focus groups. We recognize that because it's a capital fund, that can be quite a lot for organizations to manage in terms of reporting, especially if it's just 5K. It's, we're keen that it's proportionate. So Scottish Government have been able to make some money available to support organizations with the evaluation and reporting if that's necessary. So we will be able to, I think it's around £1,000. It's not much, but organizations will be able to get financial support if they need to get additional resource in place to manage the monitoring evaluation for the fund. Yeah, so I said already, the applications are open at the moment. The closing date is the 27th of October, but we will be doing rolling assessments on a fortnightly basis once we've kind of got a good batch of applications in. So if we were to exhaust the budget beforehand, then we would have to close the applications early. So please do submit in time. But so far we've received some applications, but not as many. So there's definitely still time to submit one. So we're looking to make the first awards early October, probably final awards in November. And we're asking for funds if you were to get a cash grant for those to be spent by the end of the financial year. And then monitoring evaluation will kind of take place over a 24-month period until July 2025. Okay, I think that's it around device lending libraries. So next on is our support for housing providers. So housing providers have the pot is slightly larger, so that's about 300K. Because we understand that we see lots of housing providers will have a lot of beneficiaries, housing associations have a lot of people to support often, although it's a very diverse sector. So we're looking to support any kind of social landlord or housing association through this fund. But we also like to see applications from other organizations from the voluntary or public sector for providing kind of short or long-term housing support services. So whether it's to support people affected by homelessness, organizations running shelters, or whether it's supported housing for people who are disabled or care leavers. We had quite a few applications in when we were running the Connecting Scotland Fast Track scheme, which was very popular. From organizations like this. So we're keen to kind of see what other digital inclusion support is happening and how that can be supported. In terms of the target groups, it's very similar to the device lending scheme. Again, it should hopefully tick the box for everyone, but if you're not sure, please get in touch. So whether you're supporting older residents, people in low-income households, we know that people in social housing are more likely to be affected by digital exclusion. So yeah, or whether it's people with long-term illnesses, disabilities, who are currently job seeking, or women and children who are at risk of violence. So for example, yeah, women's shelters or support organizations would come under that. What can you apply for? So you've got options if you're a housing support organization. So you can either apply for devices and connectivity to start in your lending library. So if you're already running one, then I would be advising you to support for the device lending scheme. You can also get support for devices and connectivity in a community space or IT lab or community hub, whatever that you're running. If you've got a physical space where people can come and use devices and use the Wi-Fi, whether you already have one and you want to just add more devices, or refresh your devices, or if you want to set up a new one, this might be for you. And also a third option is there if you want to just improve or set up free, accessible Wi-Fi in communal areas for your residents. So if you have, I don't know, a lobby or a communal space that people can come to, and you've got very patchy Wi-Fi, you only have Wi-Fi that's accessible for staff, and there's some improvements that you can make through better hardware or wiring or whatever it might be, then you can apply for a cash grant for that as well. So again, for the first two options, you can get devices or dongles through the device catalog. For the connectivity, hardware and installation costs, you can apply for a grant. You can also mix and match. So if you want a few devices for a lending library that you want to set up, but you also have a small kind of connectivity project that you want support for, then you can apply for both, as long as the total doesn't exceed £10,000. Or you can, again, just use the cash grant in total to fund different projects within that. For the connectivity projects and communal spaces, we know that £10,000 is not that much. So you might have projects that will cost a lot more and you just need a little bit to reach your target, then that's fine. So you can use £10,000 or whatever, could be less than that, to as much funding or to top that up, but it has to kind of be the last bit that you need, because colleagues in ScotGov are quite keen to see these projects up and running within 12 months. So they can kind of learn from those as well. So I know this is slightly complex, but yeah, do ask away later on if you've got questions. And with these, again, I would really just encourage you to get in touch and to discuss any ideas or projects that you have that you're thinking of, so we can give you some pointers for that as well. Yeah, reporting evaluation is quite similar. So again, it depends kind of what your funding is for and kind of what you're running. So again, the research team are keen to just learn about, how the devices and connectivity is used by your residents or the people that you support. They're also keen to actually speak to you as an organization. So that could be one maybe 45 to 60-minute interview with a researcher, just to understand a bit better what would help you going forward to continue your support. So again, they're keen to learn what is needed in future, to see what the Connecting Scotland programme can provide in future. There will also be further research activities that successful organisations can take part in, so there will be some optional bits as well. So if you're keen to get involved in a little bit more in-depth research, then yeah, we would love to hear from you. In terms of timetable, it's running alongside the device lending schemes support fund. So again, applications are open at the moment. We'll do rolling assessments. We'll definitely close by the 27th of October, unless we've not exhausted the budget, then we might extend it. And yeah, we're looking to make awards between October and November. and for funds to be spent by the end of the financial year. Unless you've got a bigger connectivity project, then we might be able to discuss that, be a bit more flexible. But again, yeah, we can have that discussion once we've seen the application, or if you want to give us a call beforehand. Cool. So how can you apply? So we've got our applications now on our SCVO grant making portal, which is great because it's really good, and it's a bit better than what we've had before for Connecting Scotland. So you can go to grants.funding.scot, and some of you might already have a login. If you don't, just create a login and you'll be able to see all the details of the funds that we've got available at the moment. And once you've got your login created, you can see all the documents, but they're also on the website. So we've got a guidance document, we've got FAQs, and we've got a Word version of the application form. Sorry. Okay, we've got a Word version of the application form. There's some help text as well. So if you want to just look at that first, by all means, please do. But you'll be able to save and pause the application as well, so you don't have to do it in one go. So you'll be able to do it step by step, come back to it later. Once you've submitted your application, you won't be able to change it, but you'll still be able to upload any supporting documents afterwards. So if we notice that you might have forgotten that after submitting, then we might also give you a nudge and say, hey, please can you still upload your accounts or whatever it might be. But yeah, I'm quite happy with that. We've been able to move across to that platform, but any feedback is always welcome. You can also find links to the portal and the funds on our Connecting Scotland website. If you just go to connecting.scot and then click on for organisations, you'll be able to find the details there as well, including our guidance and FAQ documents. Great. I wanted to also just follow up with a few other opportunities that are currently live or that will be live fairly soon. So there's currently the Community Learning and Development Device Fund. It's open now, it's closing at the end of the month. This is another capital fund for devices for community learning organizations. So this is for devices to be used in classrooms, for example, but I believe you're also able to apply for support for lending schemes. So if you are a community learning organization, I would just say just look at both and compare to see what is more suitable to what you're looking to do. Again, the funding team are always keen to speak to people if you've got questions. I'm pretty sure it's a bigger fund, so you might get more. You can also apply for both and see what you get. So yeah. We'll also have a third opportunity coming up from Connecting Scotland, which will be more focusing on place-based partnership working, where we're keen to support existing partnerships in digital inclusion in different regions in Scotland. So that will be announced later on in the year. And we're also very happy to say that we finally got the green light and some funding to be distributed through the Digital Participation Charter. So the Charter Fund is coming back in autumn this year as well. So if you want to just look at some of those opportunities that are already live, that are coming up, they will be on the grants portal, but they'll also be on Funding Scotland, which I'm sure you're familiar with. So yeah, always just keep an eye on that in our socials as well. And I'm sure we'll send them across to James, who can then distribute the information more widely. Cool. Yeah, so that's me. So we've got our information on the website. You can contact our help desk if you've got any questions. They'll be able to pass anything on to me that they can't answer. I've got my email address there as well. And brings me on to questions. And I can actually see you guys. So, Alan. I might stop sharing in a sec.
Sorry, it's okay. Just what size did you say the funding scheme was for the housing associations bit?
The total or per organisation?
Oh, the support for the housing associations one, just the support housing one. And you
So
said that you said one. The first one was 100,000. Just wondered what the second one was.
300,000.
300,000. Okay. Thanks.
So that's capped at 10K per organisation. So yeah, looking to support 30.
So can I just ask one more question? It was really relating to the lending scheme. I'm assuming that SCVO maybe have an idea of what lending schemes are working. And if it's obviously lending schemes that are in place, have already been in place, need to be in place for at least 12 months, you said, as part of the criteria. So are you aiming it at anybody, or should we be aiming at anybody? You know, is there good examples that you would like to see funded again? Is that part of the thinking?
Well, part of the thinking is to just find out what's available out there that we don't know about yet as well.
Right, okay.
So we're familiar with a few projects that have been working quite well. So we know that Stirling Library, so that's actually a public library, who've got a tablet lending scheme that are lending out. We know that Govan Housing Association, they ran a lending scheme during the pandemic. I think it's still going, but I know the contact there has left now. So yeah, we're kind of looking to see quite a spread. So we know like there can be quite niche ones. I know of one in the Highlands that's supporting, it's also delivered through libraries that's supporting people with the diabetes diagnosis. So a lot of those resources are only online that GPs or other health services are referring people to use. So they've got tablets available that people can borrow if they don't have them at home. But yeah, I know that they've been struggling to get people to use the scheme. So it can be, it can be tricky sometimes in some areas if you're quite niche of what you're trying to achieve. So yeah, we're kind of looking just to see, a good diversity and spread, and just to see what works for what user groups and in which contexts.
Thanks, Silke. Thank you.
Thanks, Silke. I think that was a fantastic presentation and overview, and hopefully it allows everyone to have that understanding of the various key considerations and within both of the programmes, which is great. Before I bring in Louise, there was just one or two things I had. So in terms of the Connecting Scotland device catalogue, which you can find on the guidance on the Connecting Scotland website, and it is, as Silke said, there's 2 tablets, 2 laptops, and the connectivity and the prices associated. Would organisations, if there are, I know this is it's certainly a priority for ourselves in Renfrewshire, is to look at device recycling and refurbishment charities. Would that something that would be welcome if an organisation had to put a bid in and use the device to maximise, I suppose, the funding opportunity of linking in with a device recycling charity to say we can apply for 5,000 through the device catalogue? That may get the equivalent of, say, I don't know, 15 devices, but if they went through a device recycling charity, then they may get 40 devices, for example. Is that something that would be supported through the cash side? Yeah. Fantastic.
Short and sweet, yeah. We'd be keen to see that. The team have done some great research actually very recently with refurbishment organisations across Scotland and a bit further afield. If organisations would like to do that and go down that route, get a bit more bang for their buck, by all means, please do. We have a list on the Charter website, which is also linked on our further support page on the Connecting Scotland website, which I'll put the link in here. So we've got a list of refurbishment organisations in Scotland. So if you want to have a look what's available in the area, they're quite diverse. Again, there's social enterprises that will sell them. There's charities that will just distribute them to people. So Edinburgh, we've got the Remakery where you can buy refurbished devices. It's just kind of considering what will work for you.
Yeah. And it links into the circular economy, the Scottish Government's ICT Green Strategy, repurpose, recycle before buying new, etc. So no, that's great to hear. So I'm going to bring in Louise, and then I'll have a look at the chat to see if there's any questions. Louise.
Hi Silke. That was really interesting. I loved that presentation. I would just like to clarify something. When somebody's borrowing a device from a library, are they able to take it out with the library? So How
They
would you
borrow
go
it like books.
right, okay.
Yeah.
How would you maintain the safety of that device then if somebody's taking that out with, you know, the building, if they're maybe taking it home to do maybe their universal credit claim, if they've not got, you know, a Wi-Fi able phone. I'd be worried about, you know, the cost in that. Do you know, am I making sense?
You mean the risk associated with devices not
Yeah.
returning and maybe breaking? Yeah, it's quite interesting because you're kind of asking the same questions that Scottish Government colleagues asked us when we proposed, you know, can we support lending schemes? From our experience from speaking to organizations who've been running them, whether they're public library or housing association, they've told us that the risk is actually quite low, but we would expect you to have insurance, to have a loan agreement. I would definitely say that you know, borrowers aren't liable for breakage, that you've got insurance covering that, because otherwise people will just, you know, or put people off borrowing a device. So
Yeah, because I work for East Ayrshire Council homeless housing options. A temporary accommodation officer. So, you know, we see it on a daily basis, you know, we're going out to people's houses and they're unable to access, you know, the internet, so therefore we have to do it. And, you know, as the presentations went on, you know, I've had a couple of ideas filtering in that I'll probably contact you regarding. I'll need to speak to my boss about it. But I was just wondering, you know, could we have like maybe several different libraries, you know, within different areas at East Ayrshire, but all come under, you know, like the one hub, like if housing options, if we had maybe something up near the south end of, because we've got properties going right up to Dalmellington. I don't know if you know where that is. So it's on the border of South Ayrshire. You know, I'm just wondering if we could have a hub in there with some libraries, with some devices, a library there, which then the bottom end of the, you know, the area would cover. I've got loads of things here filtering. What do you think, James? Because you know what.
So what I can say there is that our library services is OneRen. So OneRen is our equivalent of East Ayrshire Leisure Trust, and they offer a device lending scheme called Loan to Learn for periods up to 6 weeks. And they're extending that potentially into MiFi devices through the National Data Bank, so they can give them up to 6 months free data. So I don't know the processes that's in place for that in terms of, but I understand that there will be some sort of loan agreement, very similar to, I assume, the Connecting Scotland programme, where it was gifted, that it was under the condition that they won't use it for criminal activity, they'll take responsibility, they'll care for the product, but there will be, I suppose, elements where things get damaged, things get broken, and that's just, it's making sure that the organisation has, as Silke said, the appropriate insurance and cover in place to mitigate that.
yeah, we won't tell you, we won't give you a loan agreement and tell you to use it. The devices are yours, so they're owned by the organisation throughout their lifetime. And if you use a lending scheme, then we will encourage you to have a loan agreement about what you put in it and how you want to use it. Again, it will probably depend on who you're supporting and who it's for, the kind of language that you use. We've got some resources that we can share, some helpful guidance around that. So again, if you're new to this, then yeah, please do reach out.
Yeah.
But yeah, we won't kind of, tell you kind of, oh, yeah, you have to use this agreement and people have to sign up to this or agree to that.
Okay, thank you.
I suppose the other thing I should say is, so I'm undertaking a series of meet and greets just now. I was mentioned to Silke earlier of 75 meet and greets since the 3rd of July, so it's almost speed dating to the max. And what I found through this process is that OneRen offer the device lending, the loan to learn. Also, our West College Scotland operating in Paisley, they also have a device lending scheme for students. So it's understanding what's out there and how we can tap in to maximise those opportunities. So I'm just looking at the chat just now, and Fiona Cowan has asked, so when a device is lent to the borrower, does the borrower take liability for breakage? Again, hopefully we've covered that in terms of the relevant insurance cover and agreements. Class Care has said that unlike books, devices can be tracked, so that could also be a consideration that's taken on into account. And Silke's put in the link to the resources for the refurb organisations in the chat just now. So is there any other comments or questions? Kay, I saw the Kay McIntosh, I saw a few things. It was type, it says Kay was typing and then it stopped. I didn't know if you wanted to come in.
No, I was just going to I was going to ask at the end if you can share the slides, because obviously there's some folk we can pass this on to. So if you could, because I was looking at the Connecting Scotland website and I couldn't see the specific information. So those slides were really succinct. So that would be great. Apart from that, no, it sounds really good. Obviously, from an employability perspective, unemployed people are a key target group. Employability providers don't tend to deliver housing support, but I can imagine there's various organisations in Renfrewshire, many of which Alan and others will be involved in, who might be interested. And it's great that One Wren are already providing a lending library to start with. So no, all good.
Great stuff, thank you very much. Alan, I see you've got your hand up. You want to come in, and then we'll bring in Jim.
Thanks, James. No, it was just a question. It's interesting. I'm sitting here musing, unfortunately, as usual. So it's the housing associations angle. I wondered if there's been a really strong approach to the sort of national housing association providers. In Renfrewshire, we have FLAIR, which is a federation of housing associations, stretches into East Renfrewshire as well, because it includes Barrhead. But I just wondered whether there had been any kind of real mechanic around that, about drawing, because sometimes housing associations aren't part of other networks. They're quite independent, even though third sector organisations providing social housing, they're kind of independent and have a lot of community planning mechanisms and stuff. Slightly different in Renfrewshire because we've made some strides there, but I just wondered if it'd been sort of pushed hard at housing providers, the fund.
To be honest, no. But if you've got, if you've got some key contacts we could share this with, or James, if you could.
No, we'll do it. We're quite happy to do it. Stuart Miller from one of the housing associations on the line, and Stuart might want to come in. But for me, to me, it's a real opportunity to try. Housing associations are massively important for many reasons. Obviously, providing housing, but they've got a state responsibility. They're big local employers. They tend to have massive reserves. Stuart, don't you usually get massive reserves of money that you can help with in terms of delivering community engagement? So I just think it's a real opportunity to sort of almost to pull them. As I say, in Renfrewshire, we're okay, but nationally, getting housing associations more towards a sort of community, I suppose, delivery. Stuart, I don't know if you wanted to say anything.
Just quickly go in there, Ellen. I totally agree. We know that there are many housing associations that are doing a lot in digital inclusion work who are amazing. But we also know there's still a few that maybe need a bit of convincing, or kind of still at the beginning of the digital inclusion journey. So they are really the ones we're hoping to reach. We also, we said for those guys, if they want to set up new lending schemes, we're happy to take that risk, even though it's only capital funding, because we're kind of hoping that the resources and the kind of around, know-how, IT departments and so on, community workers is there to be able to set that up fairly quickly. So yeah, fingers crossed.
I think just to add, just before, sorry, I bring in Jim there, we know that tenants and customers of social housing are at greater risk of digital exclusion, which has then got other impacts and other forms of poverty and inequality. So just to again to add on to what Alan said there, so there's FLAIR in Renfrewshire, which goes into East Renfrewshire. There's also the Scottish Federation of Housing Associations, which brings together registered social landlords. And then there's also the ALACHO, which is the Association of Local Authority Chief Housing Officers. So that brings almost your your RSLs, your registered social landlords, your local authorities, and perhaps then looking at what the cooperatives and management organisations that could potentially link in. So there's a real audience there that this could potentially be promoted throughout. Jim, I'm going to bring in yourself next, if that's okay, please.
Thank you. Being a technical person, is there a model of good practice for the actual process of lending and then bringing back the machines, cleaning the machines in terms of make sure that data is not transferred back the way? In other words, people leave items on the machines, or there are viruses or other nasties left on a machine to capture people's data when it's reloaned. So is there something out there that's a model of good practice of how that actually works?
There is. We've got a technical person, I'm going to call them that, in the Scottish Government team as well. So they've got some resources that we'll be able to make available if organisations are new to this. It sounds very scary, but it's not as scary as it might be. I know people might have concerns. I was really curious to hear from some of the Sterling Lending Library scheme. So they actually give borrowers instructions on how they can wipe and reset the device themselves. So what they do, they ask people to do it themselves before they return the device. And then the staff will do it again, just to double check that it's been done. And they just do the factory reset and it wipes it quite easily. I think the Chromebooks that we have on offer, again, they're very easy to wipe as well. So they're quite easy to reset. But yeah, there are things that might happen. I know we're currently trying to help Sterling Libraries because 2 of their tablets have been locked and I just can't get back into them. But we've been able to kind of speak to suppliers, and Samsung have been in touch and they think they've got a solution. So we would try to help as much as possible if it's devices that we're familiar with. But yeah, there are kind of, we see good practice guidance. We've got a little bit in our resources or in the guidance documents around, what you want to consider for that in terms of confidentiality, data security, that kind of stuff.
Thank you, Silke.
Again, it might be worthwhile linking in with OneRen colleagues, because I'm aware, and it was just following a conversation this morning, that they have a piece of software on their devices that will enable the person borrowing the device to wipe it either on a daily basis if they're doing say university work or confidential work, or before that it goes back. And it's almost the same, I suppose, concept when you go into a library. When you access the library at the end of each night, the information's wiped. And I think it's called rewipe or reboot. And that cleans the device. So there's and it's really good to hear that there's already practices in place so that we can link into, so that we're not reinventing the wheel.
Yeah, we know some of the refurbishment organizations are using open source software to wipe their devices, and they're the same, or follow the exactly same standard as the ones that you can pay for. So it's quite interesting in some of the research that some of the organizations were telling us that that so-and-so council is paying thousands of pounds to wipe the devices, but actually we've gotten free software here that we can use and help them with. But yeah,
it's often, I see, Kay, you've put in the chat there that some housing providers that may put them off, or they may have concerns, so having those templates or loan agreements, etc., may ease their concerns. And Stuart said that the information has been circulated around FLAIR organisations, which is great to promote and raise awareness of the initiative. I can't see any other hands up. Does anyone have any final questions or queries? As I say, we'll circulate the slides. The session has been recorded, so we'll circulate the recording and you can forward that on to anyone who feels it may be of interest and benefit. But I think just in the usual way, I think if we can just thank Silke for delivering a fantastic presentation and providing that really informative overview of this programme. So just using if you can, the react button on Teams, it would be great, or use the clap button, or the clap button, your hands, etc. So thank you so much, Silke. I suppose for me, I've just taken a few notes just in terms of recapping some important information and consideration based on Silke's presentation. So the device lending libraries, £100,000 capital fund and also for cash. Apply for up to £5,000 for the, as I say, device lending libraries. It's open to organisations that are already running device lending libraries to help them expand the range of devices and connectivity that they have available, extend the number of devices available for loan or replace devices that are coming to the end of their life. Eligibility groups, over 65 in a low income household living with a long-term illness or disability, people who are unemployed or who are the victims of crime or abuse. Deadline for applications, 27th of October for that one. The the housing provider one, £300,000 capital fund overall, apply for up to £10,000 per bid. So it's to encourage and support organisations who are at the very beginning of their digital inclusion journey to increase and improve access to digital devices and connectivity for their residents and communities. Looking to fund organisations who are less experienced in digital inclusion work, less than 1 year activity, but who have the resource and supporting infrastructure in place to manage new projects. 3 opportunities within the housing providers within that fund for devices and or connectivity to support people who are experiencing digital exclusion. So it's to form a new lending library, to be part of a community space where devices and connectivity are available, are a larger improvement project for connectivity infrastructure in communal areas. And the eligibility groups under the housing provider is those over 65, people living in a low income household, people living with long-term illness or disability, people currently unemployed, women and children at risk of violence, families, people who are homeless, and again the deadline for applications for that one is the 27th of October. And again, just to re-emphasise the importance that assessment of applications will be done on a rolling basis with awards made until funds are exhausted. And this means that applications may close earlier than the 27th of October. So please apply as soon as you can, or contact Silke and the team at Connecting Scotland if you have any queries. Hopefully I've done that justice, Silke, in terms of that recap. I would just like to thank everyone for your attendance today. Hope you found it really interesting. It's fantastic that the Connecting Scotland is back on the agenda, and hopefully we can work collaboratively to maximise opportunities for those who are at risk or experiencing digital exclusion. Okay, so thank you very much, everyone. Hope you have a great rest of the day, and hopefully good luck with your applications.
Thank you.
Thanks, James. Okay, take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.